So let's create our first wood material, right? So, all right, so let's create a really simple base Vray material in wood, right? So I'm gonna create, first of all, I'm gonna try with, start with only one texture, and we will see how it's gonna look, right? So let's just create a really simple wood material, which is, so for example, I will take this texture here, which is a really simple texture. I think I blended in with 3 or 2 different textures in Photoshop. And so let's create Vray material. So the texture, if you right click, open preview window. So that's the texture. It looks quite cool. So we can, first of all, we can change the filtering type. So I was talking about this filtering types in my Vray materials metals. So please do check that out. I don't want to repeat myself again. But basically, this is quite important if you want to get the best detail from your textures. Obviously, changing this will increase your RAM usage, your memory usage in a small way. But obviously, if you're using this for the whole scene, then obviously you will use more memory. But in regards, this is really sensitive in regards of rendering time. So I will say this. Just to summarize this, pyramidical is the fastest to render. Some area is like, I don't know, 5% slower to render. It's almost the same, but this summed area is a bit slower to rendering. This is a different filtering type. None, that's gonna be the slowest to render, but obviously you're gonna get the most detail out of it. But you can get some artifacts or in distances with textures, or for example, you can get this called Moira effect. So please do check that out on Google, how it looks. But other than that, it really depends. If I'm rendering something really close, I usually use none, maybe for one object. If I'm rendering something a bit more simpler, far away, I might use summed area, and in some cases I might use pyramidical. It really depends. If I'm not happy with that texture or how it looks in my preview, obviously it depends what kind of resolution you're rendering, how far are you rendering that object from your camera. It really, everything is quite important, because keep in mind that Vray is trying to store all of that information into pixels, right? So the bigger the image you're rendering, the more detail you're gonna get out of it. If you're rendering this texture from, I don't know, 10 meters away or so, you're barely gonna see that grain detail there. It's gonna be quite blurred out. So that's when you try to play around with summed area or even none. So summed area or pyramidical, they work almost the same, but like I said, pyramidical, it's gonna take a bit less memory, and obviously it's gonna be fastest to render. Summed area is gonna take a bit more out of your bitmap, so it's gonna allocate, I think, 300% more of your information from your texture. And none, obviously it's gonna be, as you can see here, it's gonna be really sharp. There's not gonna be any pixel filtering or blending. So there's no none basically is not applying any filtering on your texture, right? So, but obviously it's gonna be slower to render. So let's start with pyramidical, and we can always, so what you have to have in mind is pyramidical, summed area, or none. So please do play that with these filtering types, play around, so to get the best result for your texturing preview, because some people are saying, oh, my texture looks so blurry and not crisp in the distance. So that's why they don't know how to play around with these textures. So what you need to know is basically pyramidical and summed area are almost the same, but obviously you're gonna get better results in a far distance with summed area. And with none, obviously it's gonna be a lot slower to render, but you're gonna get the full potential from your texture. But obviously you're gonna take a bit more RAM, and the rendering times are gonna be a lot slower. And the second thing you have to know is the blur amount. So your maximum, you can go to 2. By default, it's 1, works in most of the cases. And The blur type, I would never go below maybe 03, because that's obviously gonna render your textures quite slow. So obviously you are kind of removing the filtering from it. So it's basically blurring your texture a bit out, so it's going to be obviously faster to render. So I would say use from 04 to 08 or something like that. In some situations, if the texture is not important or whatever, you can always use 1. That's perfectly fine, pyramidical or summed area. Okay, so let's just start creating our first texture. So the base color, I always change my saturations, hues, desaturate, whatever. I usually use the color correction node because it's really convenient. You don't need to plug this bitmap into Photoshop, etc., and then resave it. It's just a waste of time. You can do this in color correction node. So you plug it in there, and for example, to me this texture looks a bit more, I don't know, a bit too yellowish maybe, so I want to go to the reddish side maybe a bit. So maybe -1 or so, right? So by the way, this texture is going to be really simple. I'm basically going to create this wood texture from one bitmap, which is the RGB channel, right? So I will be able to create a reflection pass, reflection glossiness pass, a bump map pass as well from this element only, right? So I'm gonna go to advanced now, and by the way, I forgot to, I just want to desaturate just a bit, right? And I want to plug this into the diffuse map, right? So we have our diffuse channel now. Obviously we don't have any reflections, anything. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I want to preview this in the viewport. So I'm gonna press preview in the viewport, and then I'm gonna apply this on my material there. So by the way, this model is already unwrapped, so obviously you can see the seam there. It's only one seam there, and everything else should look quite okay. So if I'm gonna render now this material, so I'm not gonna be rendering the whole image because it's a 1.5K resolution. I'm rendering this 1.5K resolution just because just so we see the texture a bit better and the details. So I will be using obviously just region rendering, so I'm not going to be rendering the whole image because obviously I'm running on a quite weak CPU. So performance, so for example, I'm running on a 10 core i7 CPU, which has 20 threads, and for the memory, obviously I have 128 gigs of RAM. That's more than enough, and I'm running on GPU NVIDIA Titan X Pascal, which is these are all not new parts. They're quite old, I think 4 years old, but anyways, it's more than enough for you guys to show how to create materials. So one important thing for the beginners especially, so if you are obviously rendering a diffuse channel, it's going to be quite fast to render because Vray is not calculating anything else. It's just anti-aliasing your texture, finding, allocating where the detail is, blah, blah, blah. But it's not calculating any reflections or refractions or bump maps, displacements, nothing. It's basically calculating just the diffuse channel, right? So obviously it's going to be faster. But when you're going to try to add more things to V-Ray material, right? So reflection glossiness, the bump map, maybe displace, maybe something else, and obviously maybe increasing the glossiness, which is going to be more matte looking, right? Or whatever. So in that case, it's going to be obviously slower to render. So this is like a golden rule. The more things you add to the material, the more complex the material is, the longer it's gonna take to render. Just keep that in mind. Same thing with the filtering as well. So you're adding more detail to the texture. The more detail you're adding, the slower it's gonna get to render. Same thing with rendering settings. The more detail you're trying to get out of the image, obviously it's gonna be slower to render. But V-Ray is really adaptive, and you have a lot of control in regards of V-Ray settings. So don't worry about that. We will nail that later on. I will create a course, some videos about V-Ray settings and where to use and which setting to use where. So, all right, so let's create our wood materials. So I'm gonna try to add now some reflection, right? So you go into the reflect tab, you press on the color. So keep in mind this, V-Ray in the reflection tab, it can take a color. So obviously I was explaining that on my V-Ray materials metals. So please do check that out. So I will apply a reflection of, for example, 150. So keep in mind this. So the black color is not gonna reflect anything. It's gonna be unreflective. The white color is gonna be reflective. So keep in mind that. So the more you go to the whiter side, the more reflective the object is gonna get. The less, the more you're going to the left side, the less reflective it's gonna get. So basically black is unreflective and white is reflective. So that's the only thing you have to know about the reflection. And obviously you can add a map there. So we are not gonna add a map here for the moment because we're trying to create a really simple V-Ray wood material there just from one texture. So in this situation, obviously for the bitmap, I'm gonna use some area and I'm gonna use 05. So I want to keep this texture as sharp as possible. And the next thing we're gonna do is obviously apply some reflection. So we're gonna use 100 and maybe 70 reflection, right? So it's gonna be quite reflective. And as you can see now, it's quite reflective. It's gonna be quite reflective. So if I'm gonna render that now, so you're seeing that it's applying some reflection and it looks like it's a lacquer wood material, right? But obviously with this kind of wood that you're seeing in this bitmap, it doesn't look realistic to get this reflective material on this kind of wood, because this wood is already screaming that it's kind of a matte looking wood, like a weared off wood. So, but I'm just trying to show you how it obviously works. For the beginners, this is going to be useful, but maybe for more intermediate people, obviously they know that already. So the next thing we can do is basically drop down the glossiness. So you have, I would say 0.5, that's your minimum. And obviously you can go lower, but that's just gonna act weird and you don't really need to do that. So I'm gonna go with 0.7, right? So with 0.7, I'm gonna render a small region there. We have a highlight there, there you go. So this is what we're getting now. We're getting a more matte looking wood, which is kind of what we want. And what I'm gonna do now is basically take this texture with shift, so drag it with shift into color correction, right? And I will desaturate this. So I will plug this into reflection glossiness, but keep in mind this, you don't need to desaturate your texture. You can literally, so look at the preview here. So I'm gonna plug this into reflection glossiness and you're gonna get the same result, right? See, nothing changed, right? Just because reflection glossiness doesn't take a color. So reflection glossiness map doesn't take a color. A color will not do anything. So basically what V-Ray is doing is ignoring a color. He is just taking a gray point basically. So something like, I'm gonna try to explain this in a really easy way. So basically V-Ray is taking this bitmap and desaturating it and plugging into this reflection glossiness. So that's how it works. But I usually like to desaturate them either way, just because for me it's just easier to see in this slate material that, okay, that's obviously desaturated, that maybe plugged into reflection glossiness. I don't really need to do this, but it's just a habit that I developed and I really like to just, I mean, honestly, you just click there and just drag it to the left, that's it. So the next thing you want to do is basically what you can do. So see, now this material is a bit too it's a bit too matte looking, right? So what I can do here is go to advanced and increase this to 150, 200, 500, too much, 300, and see how much control you get there. So for example 250, And I can go here and increase this brightness gamma to 1.2 maybe. There we go. And now if I'm gonna render this, I will get a much more cooler effect. There you go. So you're seeing that this is getting us already a more realistic result. So I will render a bigger region. So there we go. So now you're starting to get, so keep in mind it's what is black, right? It's gonna look more matte looking. So it's gonna be less glossy, right? When what is white is gonna be more reflective, more glossy, right? More like a mirror, right? So so the next thing we want to try to experiment with is gonna be our bump map. So with the bump map, it's really easy. I noticed that this Vray color to bump works really well, especially in the distance as well, because this Vray color to bump, it really enhances the bump. So, and you don't need to use high values in maps here. So you can drag this into the bump straight, but so how bump map works, obviously it's kind of the same. So the black bit is gonna go down, the white bit is gonna go up or stay at the 0 z-axis, right? So I'm gonna plug this into the bump, right? And then I'm gonna go to my where is it, bump, and I'm gonna push maybe 5. So I don't want to make this material really rough. Let's try 10 for now. So I'm gonna render this region here and see how it looks. So we should start getting some bump, right? And obviously we're getting the bump map here. You can see the veins and everything else, but to my eyes this is a bit too much. So I'm just gonna, either I can control this here, I can put this to 0.5, so you have a lot of control there, right? Let's just see how that's gonna look. So there we go. So not too much, not too low, so something like that. By the way, using the bump map, I'm gonna tell this, and some people will hate this, but honestly, when working with clients, you will learn so many things that you cannot even imagine, especially with rendering times. So the trick is, and the problem is, that if you're gonna be rendering your object from far away, right, you're not gonna see that bump map. Trust me, if that bump map is really small, like I don't know, you're using a value of 10 or something like that, you're not gonna notice that bump map. Trust me. You can notice some highlight changes in your material, but that's about it. So for example, if I'm gonna push this to 5, whoops, sorry, to 1, and maybe I'm gonna push this to let's just say 80, and I'm gonna render this out. Obviously we're pushing more work to Vray, so it's going to be slower to render because it's trying to calculate all of that stuff, right? So you will see, obviously this looks really ugly, by the way. So if you're going to be looking from really far away, by the way, I'm just zooming this out, I'm not zooming my camera out, this is just a preview. But if you're gonna be looking at this object from, I don't know, 7 or 8 meters distance, you're not gonna see that bump map work really well. It's kind of gonna blend with the bump map, and you're just gonna see the general view of the texture. Oh, that's wood. You're gonna understand that that's gonna be wood. Now, another point that you know, resolution. So resolution in Vray and all the other render engines is really important because, like I said, you're trying to store all of that information into pixels, right? So the more pixels you have, the better detail you're gonna get, and you're gonna see more detail in textures and grain and scratches and all of that kind of stuff, and reflections as well. So if you're gonna be rendering a really small image, like let's just say 1000, 2000 pixels, and that object is gonna be far away or whatever, you're not gonna see that much detail. So you really need to think about what resolution are you gonna be putting out, and are you gonna see that detail there in, you know, in 5 meters or so from your camera. So you really have to weight your scene and what resolution are going to be rendering from. So for example, sometimes when you render a bump map on a 2K or 3 or 4K image, right? And that texture, for example, that object is in like, I don't know, 3 or 4 meters or 5 meters away, you will see that bump map a bit, right? But let's just say you're going to be exploding that image into 15 or 20K rendering, right? That bump map, when you're gonna be zooming in 100% after the rendering finished, that bump map is gonna look quite drastic and quite bad. It's gonna be basically too big. They're gonna have to scale it down, because when you're rendering really big resolutions, be really careful with bump maps, because it's gonna be basically over exaggerated. So be really careful with that. And obviously when you're rendering really small resolutions, you're gonna have to crank up the bump maps just so you see that in the distance in that small resolution image. So a lot of people don't think about these couple of things, like resolution size and the distance from the texture from your camera. A lot of people don't even think about this, and they say, oh, why my textures are looking so bad, and that texture looking really blurry, or you applying bump maps and a lot of different other weird stuff, and you're rendering that from a far away, and you're not even taking an advantage from that texture. So why, the question is, why should you plug 5 different textures into that one material if it's not gonna even pick up that detail? So, and then you will spend time, Vray is going to be spending time either way calculating those things there, and, you know, trying to understand, oh, he has, you know, 5 different nodes plugged in there, bump map, reflection, glossiness, maybe some anistrophy or whatever. In a far distance, you're not going to get the full potential from it. So just try to put at least, you know, you can get away with 2 or 3 nodes. I would say for the bump map, it's not really useful if you're rendering from far away. But if you're rendering for closer ups and you're rendering a 4K image or 5K image, obviously put everything you need to put into your Vray material, because, you know, you will see that detail. So I'm just trying to explain you guys how to know and how to optimize your image, your rendering from scratch, because not everyone can afford, you know, a 16, 32, 64 thread machine. Some people are writing on my Facebook channel, Jesus, some people are still rendering with 4-core or 6-core laptop. So obviously you have to know how to optimize your scene and what can you create with your machine. So that's really important as well. So enough nagging about that. Let's just continue working on our wood materials. So all right, so I'm gonna put this to, let's just say 5, so I will be maybe happy about it. So let me just, all right, so I'm kind of happy with this. I just want to add a bit more maybe contrast in this texture. So 0.8 maybe, there we go. So a bit darker. So obviously the darker you're gonna get, the reflections are gonna become a bit more brighter. So I could increase, so obviously I can render this with the IPR mode. I like to rendering with buckets, because after the bucket is finished, you're seeing the basically the final preview, which is kind of a good thing. With progressive rendering, it's kind of refining, and you're starting to see something. But sometimes I will cancel my image after 4 buckets will render, and, you know, I'm happy with those 4 buckets. Okay, so just gonna drag that there. So I will increase this IOR number to always use Fresnel reflections. That's please, some people are still using Fresnel reflections off, and they're using a fall off map into reflection and reflection glossiness. So it's some kind of a, obviously it's a way of kind of faking or recreating the Fresnel IOR method, but all the materials in real life have Fresnel IOR values, and you can check online. I was explaining that a bit on Vray materials metals, how IOR usually works, and you have obviously an IOR reflection index list, number list, value list on Google, so you have plenty of them there. But I will say this, don't trust that list, because those are just numbers that are acting in real life or whatever. Always try to experiment and render your textures yourself, and try to match the real life photo from Google. You know, you can open an image and say, you know, wooden table or whatever, wooden chair or whatever, and you will see how the materials are reacting, right? And obviously in time you will develop, your eye will develop an understanding how the materials should look, right? So just try to recreate that, you know, by not trusting the numbers or whatever, because trust me, it's going to be a lot faster changing this to 2 or 2.5 if you're going to get your satisfaction result, right? Okay, so I'm getting more happier and happier with this material there, so I'm just gonna calculate that again. So okay, and what I want to do now is increase maybe a bit more reflection. So I'm gonna do that there. So we have a highlight there obviously, and I want to increase this even more, which is the, so I'm gonna shift drag it there because I want to keep it separate from this node. So double click there, and I will put this to 5 maybe. And keep in mind this, that I can always go and try to blend in between this node and this value here. Always you can experiment with this. So this texture, as you can see, it has some kind of a seam there, but I'm just gonna obviously ignore this for now. It's not really important. It kind of blends well, but I will show you just in a sec how to make the texture seamless in a really fast and easy way, because some people don't know how to make. Obviously there are a lot of different results. There are plugins, sorry, not plugins, but there are software on the internet that you can buy. Maybe there's some free, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure there are some plugins or texture software that you can literally by one clicking it, you can make the texture seamless, but obviously you have to buy that software, etc, etc, etc. So if you don't want to spend you know, money, or for example you don't want to you know, take the long route how to create seamless textures, I'm gonna show you just in a sec. After we'll finish with this texture, I'm gonna show you how to create a seamless wood texture. Okay, it's really simple process, honestly, couple of seconds if you know what you're doing. And obviously it depends from the texture. If the texture is really bad, obviously maybe it's gonna take a bit more time, right? So there we go, we already have a quite decent wood material. The bump map is a bit too strong for my eyes, so I'm gonna put this to 4. So if I'm gonna be rendering this in, let's just say 25%, right? You're gonna see, you're seeing now literally no bump map, no nothing. You're just seeing a bit of the reflection, highlight, glossiness reflection, and you're seeing the diffuse channel. That's about it. So that's what I'm trying to say, guys. So let's just say I'm gonna be rendering this in 50%. By the way, this new feature is pretty cool on Vray. So even at 50%, I barely see the bump map. I can see a bit of there, but so I'm gonna disable this and render that region with the full resolution, which is 1.5, 1.5. I would recommend testing your renderers at least minimum of 1.5K resolution, because keep in mind this, when you're gonna test render, I mean, I have 12 years of experience in CGI working in companies and freelancing. So, for example, what I've noticed is when you're test rendering your images at, for example, a slow resolution, Jesus, a small resolution, like let's just say 1000 or 1500, right? And you don't need to test your renders at full scale. You can just render with regions, really small region there, small region there. The textures are all good. You send it to render, right? Honestly, for testing the lighting, you just honestly need a light cache preview, and you can increase the light cache samples from here if you want to, or use the progressive, whatever. But when you're test rendering your images, and let's just say you're rendered in 1.5 or 1K resolution, and you say, oh, I'm happy with the textures, I'm happy with everything, right? And then you send it to the farm, or you render it on your machine or other node, doesn't matter, and you render it at 4 or 6K resolution. And then you come in the morning or whatever in 2 or 3 hours, and you look at the textures, and maybe 6 or 7 textures are completely off. The bump map is too big or too strong. The looks of the texture are not right or something like that. So keep in mind that when you're increasing the resolution of your rendering, keep in mind that everything is gonna look a bit different and a bit over exaggerated, especially with bump maps, displacement maps, and maybe some materials as well. But materials should look a lot better, obviously, because you're gonna get more detail from it. So you could get you could see some imperfections in, for example, glossy reflections like scratches, brushed metal materials, and etc., etc. So please always, when you try to test render at small resolutions, always before sending your renderer, always test really small regions on your full resolution. So let's just say your final is going to be 4K. So you switch to 4K before sending it to render, and you test really small regions, how the texture is looking. Okay. All right, so that's the region there. So our wood material is starting to look quite well. So we can create something different here. So I just blended this reflection glossiness with this value here. Honestly, you don't need to change anything else, and please use GGX model, because that's a more correct model of highlights and reflections, and you can control the GTR tail fall off, play around that from 1 to 3 or something like that. It really depends what you're trying to get. By the way, I'm not really happy with this texture, so I'm gonna try to correct it in Photoshop. That's my texture. Double click that, unlock it, hide that, and you're gonna have to go to filter, other, offset, and there you go. All right, so this is the seam. I don't see any seams in, so vertical, horizontal. So this is how you check if the texture is seamless or not, but I'm gonna show you a better example just in a sec. So let me just try to render this region here. All right, so that's the seam of the unwrapping, but I've seen, there you go. Okay, cool. So what I can do here now, because I'm using only one texture, I can drag this to, press U. I'm not getting that anymore. 0 and maybe 0.5. All right, so I can show you how can we create a seamless texture really in a really fast way, right? So let's just say I will import a texture which is, let's just see, I think I have a, that is seamless already. I have no idea about that one. I'm pretty sure this is not seamless. There we go. So let's just say I'm gonna drag this texture into Photoshop. So this is your texture, right? And I'm just gonna unlock it and just call it, I don't know, O1, doesn't matter. And the next thing you wanna do is basically go to Filter, Other, Offset. And so horizontal is that, vertical is that, right? So horizontal, I'm not gonna change anything yet, but I can just test it out. So see, obviously you're not seeing any seams in horizontal. You're not seeing any horizontal weird lines, right? So bam, 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 everything is good, right? So I'm gonna press that to 0 again. Oops, sorry, just pressed enter. So other, offset. So if I'm gonna zoom in, okay, so now I'm checking the vertical value, right? So obviously when I moved it to the right side, the texture obviously is moving down and up. So obviously we already see this seam there, and we're seeing a bit of the text there or something like that, right? So what we want to do here now is, obviously we're seeing this seam here, right? Which is quite ugly. So really easy and really fast. So what I need to do here now is basically select this texture and press Ctrl J, right? So you're basically copying, you're duplicating your texture basically, right? Or you can duplicate your layer, blah blah blah. Right click, but the shortcut is Ctrl plus J. Okay, and I'm gonna call this texture called O2. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is basically go to offset. Sorry, my bad. So you have to make this invisible, right? So this is not visible anymore, but these are completely the same textures. Then you select O1, and then you go to other, offset, and then you offset somewhere in the middle. The best thing would be to offset it in the middle, so the seam is visible in the middle, right? So there's the seam. So another thing you're gonna have to do is just press OK and make this visible. All right. Did I make that visible? Oh, okay, cool. So let me just start this again. So O1, Ctrl J, O2, make it invisible. Click on this one and make it other, offset the seam. So the seam is somewhere in the middle, right? So somewhere in the middle, press OK, make this visible. So basically this was the not seamless one, and we made this, we basically put the seam in the middle, right? So now you make this visible. You click on that layer, you press a mask tool, and then you press this second color has to be black, and you press Ctrl backspace. Obviously you select this mask there. So basically you're making this, if you press Alt, hold it and press on this, it's basically black. So we're masking, you were telling this layer just not to show, right? So it's almost like invisible. And now what you're gonna do is basically select this mask there. We will select, right click, we will select a soft brush, a size of, if you press Alt and right mouse button and you just drag left or right, or up and down, make it sharper, or left or right, right? So obviously you can change these shortcuts. So I'm gonna make this obviously as soft as possible, and I'm gonna do this. Really simple. Bam. Right, so I did made this line in, and what I usually like to do is make a brush a bit bigger, so the distance in between that is gonna be a bit bigger and the blending is gonna be a bit smoother. So now what I just did, I just basically introduced this texture, which was in the middle, obviously. Sorry, the middle, just because I made a mask in the middle, right? So really easy. And you do the same thing for the horizontal as well. So first you do the vertical or the horizontal, and then after you collapse it, you do the same thing, right? And you do the horizontal if you want to, right? So let's just say you can have a seam in horizontal, or you have a seam in vertical, right? So it really depends. So now what I have to do is basically just press, select all of those two layers and press Ctrl E, right? So basically, right click, merge layers, and that's your wood texture, and it is seamless. So how I can check that it's seamless? So basically, you cannot see any seams, right? So the blending is a bit obviously blurring out the texture. It's not the best thing, but this is not the, how can I say, this is not the most precise way or the most correct way. I'm pretty sure there are software that, you know, AI is gonna sort out how to make it seamless, but you know, for doing this for free, and obviously I can do this in like 10 seconds, right? You drop it, you copy, you just create a mask and you save the texture out. That's really simple. uh, so basically, now how to check that this texture is seamless? So it's really easy. You just go exactly in the same place, so offset, and you just drag the horizontal. Well, obviously you cannot see any seams, right? And then you drag the vertical, and you can see that you don't see any seams. So you see a bit of that blurriness there, but trust me, in 3ds Max, when you're using it, it's not gonna be a big deal, and obviously you can make it a bit more sharper with a bump map or something like that, right? So I will use this texture, so I'm just gonna press cancel. So by the way, if you're seeing a seam in a vertical position, so you after you've done the horizontal position, you can do the same thing. You basically just Ctrl J, make this invisible, and basically you just go there, offset. So you're happy with that already, so press 0, and then you switch the horizontal. Let's just say the seam is gonna appear there, right? You press OK, right? And then you switch this off, make a mask, right? Make a black mask, Control backspace, and then you just and you do something like that, and basically that seam is gonna go away. So I hope this made a bit sense. So I'm gonna basically save this texture now. So what I usually like to do is keep the same name, obviously JPEG, and I usually call it underscore seamless. I always leave my original texture just because I might need it for other things. So there you go. I have a seamless texture now. So if I'm gonna Control C, Control V, enter, I have a seamless texture there as well, right? And I can obviously drag this here and use it for later on. So I'm not gonna show you, 10 or 20 different wood materials, how to create it. I'm gonna show a couple of them, but obviously the principle is exactly the same. I will show you a bit more complicated ones with using the dirt map or so, but honestly, this is really, really simple to create. And another thing that I want to do just for this texture, where is it? Come on. So let me just find that texture again and try to correct it a bit. Cannot remember the name now. What was the name of that texture now? Not that one, not that one, not that one. Let me check the name first. So the name was Russian. Okay, so Russian oak. There you go. So if I'm gonna right click it and open with Photoshop, and if I'm gonna do the same thing here, so Ctrl J, invisible, filter, offset, bam. So I don't need the horizontal, I just need the vertical one. And this texture is already seamless. So I think that time I didn't use the seamless one, or did I? Russian oak. Okay, so I didn't use the seamless one. So that's how I created basically that texture, so I wouldn't get that seam here now. So that should be perfectly fine, and it will update it here, right? So if I'm gonna press render now, this is what we have here, right? So I'm kind of happy with this texture, so I'm gonna keep it as is. So it looks kind of nice. It doesn't look really reflective or anything like that. We will create some reflective wood materials, don't worry about that. So I'm gonna call this wood version 1, just to keep it simple and keep it a bit obviously faster. So I just showed you a way how to create a really simple texture. By the way, I will recommend this. Never use a lower resolution texture than 1000 pixels. Trust me, I would start from 1.5 or from 2K resolution texture. Obviously, keep in mind this, that the bigger textures you're using, the more RAM it's gonna take to render. So I would recommend using textures from 1.5 to 4K textures. That's more than enough. You don't need to use 6K or 8K textures unless you're rendering something insanely big, like 10, 15, 20K resolution or whatever. And you know, when you're gonna zoom into a 1000 pixels texture, that texture is gonna look really pixelated and really low quality, and it's just gonna look like crap, right? So keep that in mind. So resolution of the texture does matter, okay? All right, so I'm just gonna call this wood 1 because I'm not seeing the point naming these textures. So wood 1, and we're gonna create a wood 2 now, which is gonna be a bit different. It's gonna be the same, roughly the same principle. So I'm just gonna repeat myself again and show you guys how I did it in a bit of a faster way, right? All right, so let's just say I have my texture, right? I'm happy with the texture. The next thing, let's just say I know already that I'm gonna use. So obviously you see how the filtering changes. So this is more blurry, right? Because it's allocating. So pyramidical summed area, right? Pyramidical summed area. So if I'm gonna click this guy, what it says on Max is basically both methods require approximately the same rendering time. That's the truth. I tested it out. Yes, it does take around the same time. Summed area filtering generally yields superior results but requires much more memory. Yes, if you're gonna be applying that filtering on your whole scene, right, material by material, yes, it will take a lot more memory. But if you're gonna apply that only for your floors and maybe a ceiling or a couple of more objects, it's not going to be that, you know, dramatic. So pyramidical filtering requires radius max to allocate memory equal to approximately 133 okay, of the size of the bitmap. By comparison, summed area filtering requires radius max to allocate approximately 400 of the size of the bitmap, right? 400%. Okay, so obviously, as you can see, it allocates a lot more information from that bitmap. With summed area, and that's why in a far distance summed area is gonna look better, right? And obviously none is literally no filtering at all. It's just gonna ignore any filtering and it's gonna look as crisp as possible, but at the same time it's gonna take longer to render and it's gonna take more RAM. So keep that in mind. I was explaining this a bit on my metals, Vray metals video. All right, so I'm gonna use a summed area of, and obviously when I switch to none, you can see how dramatic it gets, right? So if I'm gonna open preview here, I just want to show you guys how this obviously works. So pyramidical, bam, blurry, summed area, sharper, but in a nice way, and none. That's really, really sharp, right? So let's just say I'm gonna go with summed area and I'm gonna go with 08. So obviously I can go this to 0 and that's gonna be almost like none, right? So if I switch to none, something really, really similar, right? So I wouldn't recommend using below 0.3. I wouldn't recommend doing that because it's just a bit overkill. So But obviously, if you need to, if you're rendering one object, please do. It's obviously it depends what you're trying to get out from that texture. And blur 06, that's fine. And now I'm gonna plug it into color correction, the same thing. So I'm gonna try to obviously create this a bit faster. So sorry, I'm just gonna need to copy this name here. So version 2. So this is same thing. This is a cheap way of creating a wood texture, a wood material from one texture, which is the RGB channel. You don't have any bump maps, reflection maps, normal maps. You don't have anything. You just have one texture, right? And this is how you would extract everything from it in a cheap way. So I'm gonna plug it there, and I will desaturate this a bit, right? I want to make it a bit more desaturated. Then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna shift it, drag it there, saturation off, reflection glossiness, there you go. And I want to add this to, let's just say 180, and I want to put this to maybe 2, so IOR 2, so the fall off of the reflection is going to be a lot bigger. And I want to apply a bit of that bump map, right? So the bump map as well, it's not going to take a color into consideration, but still I am doing this. So Vray color to bump. So by the way, you can do literally this. It will work just fine, okay? Keep in mind that. So now I have the bump map, and I'm pretty sure I know that it's gonna be too big, so I'm gonna go to 10. So I want to make this texture look a bit more bumpy, obviously. And all right, so let us try to put this texture on and see how the scale is working. So the scale is, so I think the scale is a bit too big. So I'm going to use 1.5 and 1.5 here. And the scale looks about right. So keep in mind this ball is 1 meter by 1 meter. All right, so cool. So let us try to render this thing out. So obviously we're getting something there. There we go. So I want that these black bits are not going to be reflective, and those top bits, those grains, are going to be a bit more reflective, right? So that's obviously, that's going to make it look a bit more realistic. And to do that is basically you need to kind of copy this black and white bitmap and put it into reflection. And obviously we're going to crank the crap out of it. So 2, maybe 1.5 for the gamma, because it's kind of a global thing. And for the RGB, I'm going to increase this and increase the contrast, obviously. So let us try to render a small region here and see, let's just see how that reacts. Okay, so 2.4, we're gonna keep more reflection there, and we're gonna blend 80 and 70 there. All right, there we go. And we're gonna put this to where, so I'm gonna drag that out of the way. So reflection glossiness, we're gonna keep this to 200. Press on that, press letter U to update, and 300. There we go. We're starting to see some differences there and here. So that's a highlight as well. There we go. Keep in mind that we can, experiment with this wood in whatever way we want. We can even apply another color correction into IOR, Fresnel IOR. I cannot remember which one is gonna be, but IOR, let's just say I want to apply into the IOR here. Nope, that's the wrong one. Fresnel IOR, there you go. All right, so because we are doing the reflection, right? There we go. We want to add this to Fresnel IOR because, like I said, black is gonna be really low, less of a fall off, and the white is gonna be the maximum fall off, right? So which is gonna be, let's just say 100. So what I'm gonna do is make this 100. Sorry, or maybe it's backwards. Okay, there you go. 300. Okay, so the more whiter you go, the less IOR you're gonna get. And then we can go to the map, which is the IOR, and put it to 50. So we're kind of blending it. 80, 20. There we go. So we're kind of experimenting, you know, how the material is going to behave and look. And just keep in mind that we are experimenting with it, right? So keep in mind that this IOR number here is not going to do nothing because we're not using any refraction, right? So this IOR is going to only work if we are using refraction, but at the same time here we did unlock the IOR for the reflection. So usually by default it's locked, and when you change this, that thing is gonna basically be the same as this one. So I usually unlock this because I just control it. I'm just controlling this into reflection, right? So obviously you have a lot of control with Vray because you can unlock things, you can change things in whatever manner you want. So, and another thing with Vray is, well, to me, it's quite annoying because in some situations, the higher the number, the more effect you're gonna get. In some situations, the lower the number, the higher effect, the bigger effect you're gonna get. So Vray is it's kind of bit in a way annoying with some settings. So sometimes if you're gonna go to point 0.2, like a threshold number, it's gonna get I think for the beginners it's the hardest thing to understand, and even now for me sometimes I mix things up with the numbers. If you're going up with the bigger number, it's gonna give you, or the lighter color or whatever, is gonna give you less of an effect. So like I said, try to troubleshoot the numbers. Try to just change it and use the IPR mode just to test rendering it out, right? So what I want to do here is maybe apply a bit more reflection there. And I want to apply a bit more of that glossiness reflection. There you go. And where's that IOR? There you go. So I want to go 500. There you go. So if I'm gonna reapply this, obviously I'm getting a bit of a different effect, Fresnel IOR. And now I'm starting to get a bit of a different effect as well. So just to obviously show you guys how Fresnel IOR works. So Fresnel IOR basically the bigger the number, the more fall off on the reflection you're gonna get. So it's gonna become more metally, right? So if I'm gonna apply 80, see what happens, right? It literally shines like a metal, right? So by the way, I just wanna disable this. Come on, Vray. And now obviously you're seeing a really shiny material, right? So I just want to see and just want to show you guys how the Fresnel IOR works with colors. So what I'm gonna do here is apply a Vray color. Let's just say that's gonna be black, okay, and that's gonna be white. Oops, sorry, white. So I'm gonna create some kind of like a mirror material. So Come on, Vray, work with me. It's a bit lagging, obviously. So I'm gonna create a reflection, right? And now, obviously, I'm gonna apply this onto, so I'm gonna create a color of 1 and I'm gonna apply this onto my object just for you guys to show how it's gonna work, right? So this is IOR, oh sorry, this is IOR 1.6. Now look what's gonna happen when I'm gonna increase to 100. Bam, a pure mirror. So look what's gonna happen now if I'm gonna use the Fresnel IOR. Where is it? Fresnel. First of all, yeah, that's fine. Fresnel IOR, bam. So that's the black color. So as you can see here, it's kind of working backwards. So the black color will give you the most effect, the biggest effect of the IOR fall off, right? So look, I'm gonna disable it. I'm literally getting the same result. Nothing is changing. This is a completely black color, right? Fresnel IOR. So the black color is basically backwards. So the black color is gonna give you the best fall off in reflection, right? So now the white color basically is gonna be like just the diffuse, basically no IOR whatsoever, right? No reflection, nothing. So that's how IOR works. And like I said, for the beginners, it's gonna be quite annoying because, like I said, some things are gonna just be backwards. So don't try to obviously don't try to be sad about it, and just test it out. Basically, really easy. So I'm gonna put that to 2.4 for now. So that's what I'm getting here. So in this case, it looks kind of weird. So I'm gonna put that to Fresnel IOR there. And I think so the black ones are gonna be more reflective, right? So the black ones are gonna be the veins, as I remember. Let me check. There you go. So the black ones are gonna be more it's gonna get more of a fall off effect, and the white ones are gonna be less of that, right? So that's what I want. So the next thing I want to do is where is it? That's fine, that's fine. So there you go. So we forgot to reflection glossiness. There we go. So that's what we want. And keep in mind, we can always mix that up, glossiness. So let's just say 50. I'm trying to get a result that is gonna satisfy me at around from 70 to 90%, right? If I want to create a perfect texture, obviously I will spend more time on it. But as you know, you can always create a material library. You can buy Project Manager if you want to, or you can create your own libraries in 3ds Max if you want to. Really easy, but like I said, the more you reuse your textures, the more you forget about them. So I usually like to recreate my textures from scratch again, because usually sometimes I will reinvent something and I will find out something new, or maybe I will do another experiment with it. But obviously if I'm in a rush, obviously I'm copying pasting objects or materials from other scenes if I already created that or whatever. Sometimes I don't even have time to create materials from scratch, so I'm gonna just reuse the old materials that I created in my scene, in my previous scene. So there you go. I'm kind of happy with this wood material. I think it works in a decent way. It's not, the best, but like I said, this is a really cheap way of creating a wood material from one bitmap. And that bitmap is around, I think, 2000 pixels or something like that. So there you go, that's the wood material, and obviously this material obviously screams that it has to look something like that, obviously not reflective or anything like that. So I'm gonna keep that as is. I don't want to extend this too much because I'm pretty sure I'm already getting more boring and boring. So I'm just gonna press this guy touch to lay down, Control A, there you go. All right, so that's version 1, version 2, and now we're gonna create a version 3 material, wood material, which is obviously gonna be a reflective material, right? So a reflective material, I think that's the most easiest way of creating a wood material. So a reflective material should be something like made from a veneer, something that's a really cool exotic material, and definitely it can be lacquered and it's gonna look quite cool. So I'm not sure if this is seamless or not, so let me check that first. I'm pretty sure it's not, so let me check that. Offset. Okay, so it's not, but vertically it is, which is fine. So let us try to put that into 3ds Max. There we go. So I'm kind of happy with the color. So it could be maybe a bit lighter. So I'm gonna increase that to 120. I'm gonna desaturate this a bit because keep in mind when you're creating materials, and I'm talking about any material, if that material is gonna be really saturated, right? So for example, something like that, right? That's just too saturated. When you're gonna apply Photoshop work, post-production work in your Photoshop, After Effects, Lightroom, whatever you are using, if you're gonna start applying LUTs, color corrections, etc., keep in mind this: your contrast is gonna be a lot more intense. So your highlights are gonna become more lighter. Your darks, your black colors, your shadows, whatever, are gonna be more darker, and some areas are gonna be basically black. And colors, the colors will bump up as well, so some of them will become more saturated, but but this is not the case with all the LUTs. For example, some LUTs are desaturating the color, some LUTs are literally crazy in saturation. So you have to find like a middle. Obviously don't desaturate completely, keep the color, but I wouldn't say, using that saturated color. So I would say just, make it a bit more desaturated. And if you will need to make it more saturated, that's a really easy thing to do in Photoshop. So I'm going to keep this a bit desaturated. I'm going to plug this into my material, which is going to be version 3. Okay, so that's going to be version 3. There we go. And literally that's about it. The next thing you have to do is just apply some reflection, and I would use maybe 120, and I would use 1.85 or so, maybe less than that, maybe 70. Okay, and just show this in the viewport. Apply this on your material. There we go. Obviously the orientation is bad, so we will flip this to 90, and I will use a summed area on this one as well because I can. There we go. So this is our texture, and I cannot really, well, I can see the seam there, which is wrong, and I cannot see any more seams. I think we can keep this if we want to. Let me just try to obviously fix this. So unhide that, make that black. Whoops, come on, work with me. There we go. So if I'm gonna do this, it might work, but I'm not sure. Whoop, there you go. Other offset, move it there somewhere. There you go. So see what I mean? It could look a bit weird because we have a different wood there. We have a completely different looks there. So if that line would match there, that could work really well. But we can try to obviously create this by just doing something like that, and that's it. And you save the texture, and always keep in mind, save the texture as underscore seamless. So you have the original if you need to, and you have the seamless one, right? So I'm gonna go to my what's the name, wood. I hope I'm gonna find it fast, right? Because I'm bad at this. Seamless, there you go. Thank God. All right, cool. So I have my texture now, and I will I do want to make this a bit smaller in this area here, because keep in mind the texture is stretched a bit. So the texture is not square, it's kind of rectangular, right? And it's really wide. So basically you have to squish down into the vertical alignment, right? So something like that, right? Because before it was looking a bit weird. So we can drop this to 0.8 and 0.3 there. And let's just move this texture a bit, something like, nope, I don't like that. Trying to make this as nice as possible. There we go. Maybe a bit less, 6 and 1. Nah, that's too big. So 08 was working fine, and 3, something proportionally right. So do this. All right, I think we can live with that. All right. So the next thing we can do is apply some reflection, right? So 80, that should be fine. Show that in the viewport. Whoop, there we go. Sorry, looks, yeah, there we go. So it's quite reflective. And I would definitely do is, what I would definitely do is decrease the glossiness just a tad bit, right? Just to get that really, really small highlight there, as you can see. So open preview. So something like that, right? Really, really small. Don't use a value of 99, because that's just weird. Use 95 or 97, you can go with that, but in this case I will use maybe 96, right? Just a bit of it. So now I'm gonna go into my preview. By the way, I want to save my scene and press IPR mode. There we go. So we are getting some reflections here, and this material does look quite cool at the moment, but we will obviously bump it up a bit. So obviously your reflections should be sharp, but not too sharp. It's not a mirror, it's a wood lacquer material, right? And another thing is, well, already this material looks quite nice, right? So another thing you would want to do, because this is a lacquer material, right? So it, in general, all lacquer materials have some kind of distortion in them. I wouldn't over exaggerate that effect, but if you have the time, if you want to do it, you can. So you can just apply a noise and into the bump, and don't use the Vray color to bump. That's not it's not necessary. So by the way, go to the maps and obviously decrease this to a really, really low number, right? You don't want to, like, for example, if I'm going to use 20 now, look how horrible it's going to look. Sorry about that. First of all, we need to decrease the size, which is going to be maybe 5. Okay, so this is really small, as you can see here. So let's just do 20. So the size of 20 centimeters, right? There you go. So it's deforming my object. As you can see, the reflections are all deformed. And we can try to increase this to 30. There we go. And maybe 40. I think 35 will be fine. Yeah, there you go. And now what we need to do, obviously we can increase this to 0.05, right? And we're gonna get something like that, or for example 0.05, where we can get really different. So look at this. I didn't even increase the glossiness, decrease the glossiness reflection number, and I'm already getting some kind of like a matte looking material, right? Just because it has these small bumps in it, right? And this is obviously like a realistic way of how realistic materials are working, but obviously we will be doing that with reflection glossiness value, because we can get more out of it. I mean, there's a lot of ways to create these kind of things, right? So let's just say for this case, in this case, I'm gonna keep this, and I'm gonna put the bump map to maybe 2, right? So just a bit, where is it? Maybe 4. So just a bit of that bump just to deform the reflections just a bit, right? So we just did that, and we have ourselves a quite nice, clean, new looking reflective material. And the material is really, the texture is really nice as well. It looks quite exotic. There we go. If you want to increase this reflection even more, you can increase the IOR, or you can increase the reflection. But how I usually like to do is decrease the reflection and increase the IOR number. But like I said, there is no right or wrong. It depends what you're trying to achieve. If you want that material to be like, you know, like a mirror, or in some cases, you know, let's just say the client says make it more reflective, you send it and the client replies make it more reflective, a bit more reflective, make it more reflective. And yeah, you kind of want to get that reflection to the client to make him happy. So you're gonna crank the reflection, or you're gonna crank the IOR. If the reflection is maxed out, you're gonna end up cranking up the IOR, so just keep that in mind. So basically what the reflection is gonna just crank up your reflection, but it's not gonna crank up the fall off of your reflection, right? So the more straighter you're gonna look at it, you know, obviously the less reflective it's gonna look. But when you're gonna increase this Fresnel IOR number, obviously no matter from what angle with the camera you're gonna look at, that texture is gonna look really reflective. Just keep that in mind. So read about Fresnel IOR numbers and how it works. It's basically increasing your reflection from whatever angle you're looking at. So this is our a new looking wood material, which is kind of like a lacquer wood material, which obviously looks really clean and nice. I wouldn't apply anything else on it if it has to look new, right? So that's about it. If you want to play with this one, I'm just gonna show you another version of it. You can apply a bit more, I don't know, interest to it. So let's just say we're gonna change the hue a bit to the greener side, or to the yellowish side. There we go. Let me zoom in a bit, and I'm going to use a number of maybe 2.5. There we go, something like that. And I'm going to apply this here, and we will gonna name this version 4. So we're going to start applying some, so for example, some fingerprints or some scratches, for example, in this case, right? And for the scratches, you can go with some dirt maps or there we go, or you can add a bump map, or you can add a reflection glossiness. It really depends what you're trying to achieve and from how far are you looking at this texture. So obviously I have some scratches there, I have other scratches as well, but let's just say this, not sure about that one though. So let's just say I have this one, which is a really simple bitmap. And I'm gonna apply a 5 and 5 and 5 here. Some at the area for now. And we just need to plug it into a reflection glossiness, or like I usually like to do, to have more control, is to put to color correction if I will need to. And this is what we're getting already. So let me just check. Yep, there you go. So I'm gonna maybe put this to 10 and 10. So I want to, by the way, this ball is 1 meter by 1 meter, so it's quite big. So let's just say this is a table, right? And I want to see some scratches on it. So if I'm gonna render it now, it's gonna look really drastic. There you go. So obviously it looks quite scratched out. So I'm just gonna use the IPR mode. There you go. So this is the wood that we're getting right now, and obviously it looks really scratched, right? So, and keep in mind, I'm not using any bump map now. So let's just say I will bump, where is it? the bump map, well, sorry, we're using the bump map for the deformations obviously, but we can mix that up if we want to. So for example, color correction, so sorry, this scratching map is going to reflection glossiness, and I can try to show you guys how it works with the bump map. So you can see here that the bump map, it is working fine, but yeah, it doesn't look realistic, nowhere near that, right? It looks kind of horrible. It looks like this wood was made like that and they painted in, or I'm not sure how to explain this, but this looks like crap, right? Whenever I'm gonna switch to reflection glossiness, this does look like it's scratched, like the lacquer, the top of the lacquer is scratched, right? And by the way, this looks, it doesn't look the best, but we will fix that soon. So I'm gonna push this into, so look what's gonna happen. We can copy this map if we want to, or we can sorry, let me just open that because I'm getting the same bug. There we go. I can delete it now. So so I can plug this into the bump map. Yep. So what I'm getting now is basically, listen, you're not gonna see that bump map from afar away, trust me. So I'm gonna put this to 1. So now I'm using the reflection glossiness and I'm using the bump as well. So I'm kind of getting a more realistic result just because these scratches have microscopic bump into it, right? In real life, how this works is obviously you will scratch it and it's gonna make an indent, which is gonna be quite microscopic, right? It's gonna be really, really, really small, right? But it will do that. So for example, I'm gonna try to explain this in a better way, sorry. So something, it's gonna be something like that, right? So this is your, where is it? There you go. So this is your wood surface, right? Okay, so this is clean, no scratches. And now I'm gonna show you what is gonna be. So basically, that's the wood surface, that's the scratch. The wood surface, that's the scratch, that's the scratch, the scratch, the scratch, the scratch, the wood surface. And yeah, you're getting a lot of scratches there. And so this is clean, no scratches, and this is scratched. So that's why when you look from an angle, the light changes, obviously the shadows are changing as well, the highlights, everything, and that's why it's creating. And let's just say this is the top bit of the lacquer, right? So this is the lacquer, and let's just say this is the wood. So this is the wood beneath the lacquer surface, right? So you're getting scratches and obviously it gets diffracted, blah 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 blah. Long story. Basically, that's how it works. So in general, this is a bump map, and obviously when you scratch that lacquer gets a bit I'm not sure what's the word for that, but like a velvety. Obviously when you scratch a glass, you kind of make these microscopic indents, and that's why it looks so matte looking, right? It's like you're doing what with the sandpaper, right? You're making small indents into the material, so that's why it creates this kind of a effect. Okay, so yeah, so there you go. So I'm gonna render this now with the bump map. So there you go. So that's the bump map, and now I'm gonna unplug this and see the difference. So literally you cannot see a lot of difference, right? And that's it. I'm not calculating the bump map. So for Vray, I'm giving less work to do, right? So I'm gonna apply this, but if you want to apply this bump map, it's a really easy fix. You just do this, bam, bam, into the mix. You mix it at 50%. You put that into bump map, and there you go. You can control your bump map now to make it a bit stronger because you're blending 2. So each of these maps are using 50% of its potential. So you have to put this to maybe 2 just to get a bump map of, of 1 or 2. So you have to increase that effect there, right? So I will use this at 1. Okay. And I will use less of it. Okay, so I'm gonna use less of which one is it now? 0. So that's gonna be full bump. 100 is gonna be full scratch, right? No bump map, no noise map. So I'm gonna use this at 20. All right. And then the next thing I want to do is basically glossiness. I'm going to put this to 40 because I don't want to see that much scratches, right? I'm just going to see a bit of it, right? Just a bit of it. There you go. So I can create things like that, right, in the wood surface. So for example, if I'm going to apply this here, I can see some nice scratches there. So obviously, like I said in my first video, you will not create materials that are really weared off or whatever, unless you're in the gaming industry or creating a project for competition or something like that. But usually for clients, 95% of the time, you will be creating new, nice looking textures. Obviously, some of them can have scratches, fingerprints, and brushed metal effects, etc., etc. But other than that, the materials will have to look nice and new, because obviously the client is trying to market their projects, their interiors, exteriors, doesn't matter. Everything has to look quite fresh and new. So that's what they're trying to sell, obviously, right? If you want to create really weird off materials all the time, uh, yeah, you're kind of in the wrong industry unless you're working on something completely different, not, ArcViz for new clients, which are marketing new projects, new interiors, new house types. I mean, I'm not joking. Maybe you're in the wrong industry and you would have to maybe put yourself into gaming industry. Obviously, there are professions like obviously creating gaming surroundings. So you would have to know how to obviously unwrap, bake rendering engines, work with the rendering engines, etc., and model obviously surroundings and all of that stuff. So you will get advantage of creating really weird off materials. But obviously, like for example, I created this project a couple of years ago, which was the Hobbit bedroom. Where was it? There you go. So obviously I did take an advantage of weared off materials. So for example, this side table here is quite scratched, and the walls and everything else it has some weared off materials there. You can see the scratches there. They're a bit over exaggerated, but that's what I wanted to achieve. Like for example, this fabric there is using a blend material with, as you can see here, a different type of fabric. That's a different type of fabric, and I'm using a dirt map. Really easy setup. Same for this one. Obviously, if you're going to create this for the client, the client is not going to be happy, trust me. So you kind of gonna spend creating these kind of materials only for your personal projects most of the times. All right, so obviously there can be some feature walls or materials that you will have to create for clients, but that's going to be a quite rare thing to do. All right, so we have this simple scratched wood, and same thing what you can do with this wood is try to blend it in with it with I think I have a fingerprint. Yeah, there we go. I have a fingerprint dirt map, black and white map, obviously. So the black color is the fingerprint, as you can see here, and the white color is just an empty, obviously, space there. All right, so this is, by the way, this bitmap is a bit over exaggerated. Maybe I would blow up in Photoshop and I would make some white patches with the brush or whatever, but just to randomize this a bit better. But this is like a lot of fingerprints in one place. Obviously you can use this into dirt maps or whatever. So in this case, I will plug this into reflection glossiness. So reflection glossiness at the moment has this map, right? So I can use a mix map, put one there and put one there, and I would use this as, let's just say 50 for now. So I want to see less of the fingerprints. So I would have to go up. There we go. Whoops, sorry. So I'm gonna have to go down. So more scratches and less fingerprints, and I'm going to use this to reflection glossiness, right? So now for the reflection glossiness, I have to see that in the preview. There you go. So that's the preview. So these fingerprints are a bit too big. So I'm going to make them smaller, something like that. And let's just see, whoops, sorry about that. So let's just see how they are reacting now. So I'm starting to see a bit, so this material is starting to get a bit more matte looking. But at the same time, I'm starting to see some fingerprints in some areas, which is obviously I'm rendering a low resolution rendering, which is 1.5. I would bump this up a bit more. Okay, so let's just try to increase this number to, let's just say maybe 60. So I'm gonna get more of a fingerprint. There we go. We're starting to get these fingerprints and a bit of those scratches, obviously. There we go. So we see some fingerprints, but obviously I want to use just 30% of those fingerprints. So I'm gonna render this region here because obviously to render this kind of a texture is quite fast. And I'm rendering this with brute force because obviously I'm not rendering a massive scene with a lot of objects and textures and materials and whatnot. So I would definitely maybe consider using irradiance map, but in this case, for this simple object and just testing out the materials in a bit more correct way, in a more physical, accurate way, I would definitely use brute force if you have the power to render. So we can see some, obviously we saw some fingerprints there, but I want to see less of them. And there you go. That's your scratched lacquer wood material, which is obviously looks a bit more weared off, right? There you go. All right, so I think this material looks quite nice. Obviously, we can play around with IOR number and all of that stuff. So for example, I can go 2.2. So it's gonna get more reflective. There you go. So the reflections are gonna become much more intense, right? So the angle of the reflections are gonna change a bit more. So they're gonna become more drastic. Same here, as you can see, it's getting more whiter, and obviously the the scratches are becoming more intense as well. There you go. So, you know, if you want to get this kind of a result, you can. It's just controlling. Basically, when you're creating wood materials in from one cheap texture, well, not cheap, but literally from one texture, you can use well, diffuse color will not matter anymore. Obviously, just keep in mind this, like I said, you can create millions and billions and billions and billions of textures, but you can control this, for example, like that. So let's just say I want to make this I don't know, darker gray, right? And now I'm gonna start blending with the diffuse, right? So I'm gonna take this texture a bit out. So let's just say I'm gonna put this to 50, bam. That's what I'm getting right now. So in some cases, this is ideal to create some different textures. So for example, I'm gonna get less of this grain texture, and I'm gonna start increasing this, as you can see, blackish, really darkish color. But I'm still seeing the texture, but it's not that intense anymore. I'm kind of starting to blend this with a darker blackish material, as you can see here, and it kind of looks nice. Obviously I can't create this with this one as well. So for example, but obviously if you want to reduce the texture from this diffuse channel, you can do this by, okay, come on Max, Wow, this just crashed. Uh, okay. All right, another thing is to hate about Max is, yeah, sometimes it will crash. So now let's go to Autoback and just see the date, obviously 25th. Yeah, it didn't save the preview, sorry, the scene. I'm just gonna open it again, and I'm really sorry about that, but it does happen from time to time. And I don't have the auto backup because I was canceling it all the time. All right, doesn't matter. Basically, I will include this file into my master Vray file so you could get it on my Gumroad or on my website. So, all right, so we already created 4 versions of. I already showed you guys how to create 4 versions of the wood material. I'm gonna show you now how to create a bit of a more complex wood material. So basically a more expensive wood material. All right. Oh, so we do have, okay, so it did left something. That's fine. All right, so let's just save this again just in case. Cool. So I did save it out. So version 3, so I showed you version 4 with the scratchiness material. So I'm just gonna try to recreate this really fast again. Sorry about that, guys. And after that, I'm gonna show you, because I just want to keep this in my scene, and after that I'm going to show you a more complex texture, maybe 2 or 3 more complex textures with a wood material, right? So this is going to be that, and what I want to do is apply a scratchy material. There we go. A color correction, plug it there, reflection glossiness, maps, and I want to put this to, let's just say 40, and I want to blend this with 9. There you go. Maybe 9.5 for now, and I want to apply this here. Okay, and for the bump map, was it 35 as I remember? Noise, there you go. Fast forward this if you don't want to watch it again. Sorry about that, guys. Bump map, and for the bump map I'm gonna use just 1.5. Apply this there, and obviously I want to use a bit of those fingerprints and fingerprint there we go, and use as a mix. Plug it into there and plug it into there. Sorry about that. There we go. Into the bump map, and use this as a 30, 50, maybe 40. There you go. And another thing is we need to increase this to maybe 10 and 10. Whoops. 10 there, and show this in the viewport. Come on. There you go. That's fine. And now for the fingerprints. Those are too big. So let's just make 2 and 2. And keep in mind, I'm using pyramidical and pyramidical for now. Maybe for this one, we can use a value of 0.5. And now if I'm gonna press IPR mode again, so I'm just gonna render a small region just to make sure that this texture is working fine. There you go. So the bump map is a bit too strong. So the bump map mix, I'm gonna use 20, maybe 80. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong bump map. So that's fine. We need to create a couple of more. 20 or 80. There you go. So that's gonna be our bump map. And now we need to create another mix, which is gonna have, which is gonna have those scratches, and it's gonna have those fingerprints, which is gonna be, sorry, not the bump map, but the reflection glossiness map 30. I'm gonna apply there, and reflection glossiness, I was gonna use, yeah, maybe 40 or so. Let's just try that. There you go, something like that, right? I'm gonna increase the IOR to 2.2 maybe, or just 2. There we go, and we're gonna increase this to 80 and put this to literally 5. There we go. So we did create a different effect, and I think we want to use this at 20 for now. Maybe 25. Whoops, 25. And there we go. It's not too much. Don't over exaggerate with text dirt maps too much. You just want to get that you know, realistic result. As long as it looks as realistic as possible, you're good to go, right? And I hope that my max is not gonna crash again. And there we go. We can leave this texture for now. So that's gonna be our version 4. And now we're gonna create a let me just save this again. Sorry about that. So let's just create us a more complicated wood texture. So obviously you saw how to make the texture seamless, which is quite easy to do and quite fast. So this is obviously was a bit more weird off texture. This is just a different texture basically. This was kind of a lacquer texture. Obviously we can apply where's the noise, so we can obviously apply this here because it's gonna work fine. So always apply some bump map if you want to, just to make it a bit more realistic, right? So I'm gonna keep that as is. And this is, you know, this lacquer has already some weared off scratches and all of that stuff, right? So now we're gonna create a more complex wood, which is obviously gonna have more stuff in it. So for example, so wood, let's just go to whatever CG axis, and I cannot remember which wood did I use. I think that one was fine. Dark wood 1, dark wood, what's the dark wood? Can't remember now. There we go. So let's just say we're gonna drag this texture here, and I hope it's not gonna crash. Yep, everything is fine and good. So obviously if you want to test the texture that is seamless, I showed you how to do it. Obviously you can see that in Max as well, but if you want to make this sure, so offset, bam, it looks seamless, bam, it looks seamless. Like already it seems to look fine, right? So how to create a more complex wood texture? Well, it's kind of easy if you know how the textures are working. So for example, you know how the diffuse channel is working, you know how the reflection is working. So keep in mind that I will remind this for you guys. So the reflection can take a color in. So for example, if I'm gonna make, I was showing this by the way in metals. So let's just say I will create this to 2, and I will create a reflection of, let's just say, this pinkish color, right? And I will show the background, right? So you can see that it is taking a color, right? So I'm gonna increase the IOR a bit. So you're seeing that it is taking color. Reflection glossiness is not gonna take color. Refraction, it will take color. Obviously you can see that it has a color. And everything else will take black and white, okay? So if you have the color here somewhere, obviously it's gonna take a color, right? Quite simple. So let's create this more complex, well, this is not, it's not like a more complex texture. It's basically, it has more bitmaps to it, right? So So the first thing, obviously, not going to be reflective for now, and I'm going to put this to 2 for now. And so this is the wood texture, obviously, and I will use a summed area of 05 just for this material preview, just to make it look a bit more sharper. So this is the bitmap, and obviously I will run through color correction because to me it's a bit too saturated. So I will desaturate just a tiny bit. Okay. And then I'm gonna plug this into the diffuse. Bam, we already have our texture here. So I will apply this here, and obviously the orientation is bad. So sorry, it's not correct. So the texture size is too big as well. So let's just try 2.2 and maybe 1.5. Sorry, 0.5 tab 1.5. Check that. It looks okay. Maybe 1.8. Yeah, I think that looks about right. Okay, so we already have our texture as a diffuse, and obviously if we will render this, that's what we are getting. So let me just try to stop it, use the IPR mode, and render this out. So obviously we're not rendering any reflections or anything like that now. I'm just checking how the texture is looking, how the anti-aliasing is working with the texture. And obviously we can see that this texture has a lot of detail. All right, so this texture has quite a lot of detail, but still I would want to make this at 2.2, I think. Yeah, so this is a bit better. There you go. I'm quite happy now with the texture. Not too big, not too small. There you go. I'm gonna cancel it for now. So there you go. So this is gonna be our wood version 5, which is gonna be a bit more complex. 5, there we go. So the next thing is gonna be going to, so you have your diffuse map, you have your glossiness map, you have your height map, you have your normal map, you have your reflection map, and blah blah blah, and they all look kind of the same. Well, I mean, I'm a bit wrong here, but at the same time you can extract quite a lot of things from one texture, which is a cheap way of working, right? But so obviously you can see that this is the height map because it has some bumps and has some, you know, darker areas there and there. So this is the reflection map. So you can use as a reflection map into the reflection slot or the reflection glossiness slot. But obviously sometimes you have a glossiness slot, a glossiness map, which is quite useful. So I'm just going to show you how to obviously plug these in. And just not to confuse you, I will plug one by one, right? So I will create a preview here somewhere to make it bigger. So obviously keep in mind this is going to be rendered as well. Okay, so so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a reflection. The reflection map, as they say here, it is here, right? So for the reflection map, I will use the same approach, 0.8 maybe, more than enough. And what I usually like to do is use a color correction just because if I will need to obviously adjust it a bit, I will be able to do that. So reflection, bam. So we're already getting a reflective material, which is obviously we can render this out here. Or let's just try to render this region because it has that highlight there. There you go. So we're seeing that this is how obviously the reflection is working, and it does give us a quite nice reflection, right? There we go. So it kind of looks like a lacquer material already, right? So now I'm going to switch this region again. And honestly, I'm just going to disable that preview. So there you go. So this is what we're getting now. And the next step for us is obviously moving a glossiness map. So this glossiness map, it's gonna what it's gonna basically do is gonna be we're gonna plug this into the glossiness. So really simple, right? So we just need to push this to some area again. Sorry, it's a bit laggy when it's rendering. And you have to plug this into reflection glossiness. Bam, there we go. So this is what we are getting already, right? So it does look that this wood is pun intended to be a matte looking wood, right? Obviously we can go here and increase the IOR to 5, for example, and it will give you different effect, right? But at the same time it doesn't give you a nice realistic effect. So I'm gonna keep this at 2. Usually for wood I use from 1.6 to 2.2, or sometimes I experiment a bit more and go further, but usually you're not gonna put IOR to 50 or 40 or something like that in regards of wood. So what I usually do, so this is why I'm trying to show you why I'm using, because sometimes I'm not happy with what I want to achieve from the material. So for example, at the moment I'm not happy with this matte looking material because I want to achieve something a bit more glossy, right? So in this bitmap you can obviously change the output to a lighter color, right? But this is doing quite globally, so I usually don't play around with these settings too much. I usually try to show, because sometimes, you know, if some other person is gonna jump on your project and he's gonna want to adjust the, you know, the material or whatever, you know, you want to keep your original material as original as possible, which is what I mean is unchanged. You want to show a person that, you know, there is a node, there is, you know, you plug this texture into a node and the person can see that you played around with this texture, with this node, right? The reflection glossiness, bam. So in this area already I can play around with an advanced slot and put this to, let's just say 300, bam, right? Completely white. 200, starting to see some variations there and here. So 150, whoops, sorry. So 120, there we go. I'm trying to, I'm already increasing some contrast. If I want to put more contrast, oh, bam. You can play around with lift, offset, pivot, see what you're getting. It's basically changing the looks of it a bit whiter. And if you go minus 0.5, it's gonna be really contrast. As you can see, you can get a lot of different effects here. You can even play around with red and green and blue channels. So for example, this will become a bit more reddish if you want to. Obviously it will not affect the black and white material, but if you change that, sorry, here, it will affect it, right? So for example, I will put that to 500 and literally that's gonna become, whoops, sorry, I forgot to, you have to apply this guy, right? So these are not gonna affect anything unless you check the box, so the whole line will be activated. So at the moment I'm controlling the RGB globally. All right, enough of that crap. Let us play with this material a bit. So I want to increase a bit of more contrast. There you go. And I want to make it a bit more lighter. Whoops, that's a bit too big. 150, I can see the preview here as well. It gives me a decent preview, right? So there you go. So now I want to increase the reflection a bit. 150. Maybe 125, that should be fine. There we go. So reflection, glossiness, honestly, even you can you know, disable the reflection and increase the reflection color if you don't want to, you know, be that the darker colors are going to be less reflective and the lighter more reflective. It really depends what you're trying to achieve. All right, just that's really important. So diffuse, reflection pass, and the reflection glossiness pass, and I just showed you 4 different examples, well actually 2 in this preview, how to achieve that, right? So how to control and how to create these kind of textures from one material, right? So obviously you can desaturate, you can go here, you can invert if you want the other side to be reflective or whatever, or some other parts to be reflective and other parts to be non-reflective. It really depends, but you can easily extract a lot of things from one texture. Keep that in mind. So this is a more posh way of working with materials. Obviously, your materials will look well, in some situations a lot better. In some situations they're not going to look a lot better, they're just going to look more correct, obviously. But it's not, you know, oh my god, the best way to create a good looking wood material. So there's a lot of ways, obviously, as long as you have a high resolution texture. So if I would have, for example, this texture in a 4K or whatever, I can extract whatever I want to extract from it because I have so much information there. If this texture that has, you know, reflection pass, reflection glossiness pass, and this is honestly, these textures were created from one material, and there are scripts and there software that basically you upload a material, you press one click and you can generate reflection, reflection pass, reflection glossiness. That's a hard word to pronounce. And normal maps, displacement maps, whatever you want to you know, extract from it. But in general, this is like, you know, the same way of doing it. So like, this is the really fast way. You're just plugging into color correction, dragging down, adjusting the lightness. You can play around with the invert, whatever you want to achieve. You will extract even the bump map, right? And the bump map works really well. You can even use this for the displacement if you want to. All right, let's get to this texture. So I already have my reflection glossiness. So now what we need to do is go and find the height map. So the height map, this one. So the height map, you can use this for the bump map, or you can use this for the displacement. It really depends. So for example, there is a normal map, which, keep in mind, normal map is always gonna be faster to render, but from some camera angles, from perpendicular camera angles, it's not gonna look really good. If you're looking more towards like 90 degrees with your camera, yes, it's gonna look quite nice. And by the way, normal map, to render a normal map, it's really fast. Usually normal maps are used for gaming, most, like 100% of the times. That's, you're not gonna use any bump maps, you're gonna use normal maps because it's just really fast to render. It's like a faking the light, bending the light according to the normals, etc. It's a long story. Just read about it online on the internet, how normal maps work. Okay, so I'm gonna plug this. I'm gonna import this into Max, and I'm gonna show you one important thing to make it work correctly. This is really important. Don't forget it. So open the normal map. You open the bitmap and you import it as an override gamma 1. That's really important. In this way, it's gonna work correctly. Okay, so, and maybe you're gonna see this in the preview just in a sec. So maps, so the bump map, let's just say I'm gonna put to 150, right? And then you have to, what you need to do is you need to find very normal. Where is it? There you go. So you plug into normal map, and you plug that into bump map. There you go. That's your normal map. So now look what's gonna happen. I think it's gonna change a bit. I cannot remember now. So if I'm gonna use 2.2, open. I hope my Max is not gonna crash. There you go. I'm just gonna save this just in case. Whoops. Control S. Did I save? Control S. Not saving it. There you go. All right, so as you can see, the 2.2 gamma doesn't work correctly. So this is wrong. If you're getting this preview, yeah, you have to go here and change this gamma. And this is only for normal maps. Change this to override 0.1, right? You open it, and this is when it's gonna work fine, right? There you go. So by the way, this is way too high. I'm going to use maybe 10. That's the maximum. And now I'm going to render this preview. So this is how it works. Obviously, I'm applying a bit of that fake-ish bump map. And another thing I can do is obviously go to the height map and obviously apply this into the bump. I hope that Vray is gonna calculate this effect, because sometimes the IPR you have to restart it just to take that effect in. So this is the normal map. I just plugged in the bump map. So now I will do some tests for you guys. So I'm gonna render this with normal and the bump map plugged into the normal. So I'm gonna render this preview here. So, and I'm gonna put this on to save and use 7.8 seconds. So I'm gonna drag the bump map out. So now I'm using only the normal map. All right, save that. So we're getting, it's kind of the same, right? So now I'm gonna plug this height map into the, where is it? Let's just say into the bump map directly, right? Now I'm gonna render this again. And as you can see, the rendering time is completely the same, right? So in some situations, if you're gonna, because the bump map is so small, so keep in mind this. So if I'm gonna put Vray color to bump just to enhance it a bit, if I'm gonna do that, and if I'm gonna increase the bump map to 25, so this is what was I talking about a bit earlier on. If you're gonna increase the bump map a bit more, Vray is gonna try to sample that texture, and it should take a bit longer to render. So 7.8, I think that bump map is not that drastic or so dramatic. Bump map, let's just say 150, really dramatic. I'm not sure how ugly this bump map is. Something is really dodgy with this one. Okay, oh my god, sorry guys. So I just forgot that we need to change this to 9090. That's a newbie mistake. There you go. All right, there we go. So now the bump map should work correctly. There we go. All right, so it took me 7.4 seconds, which is almost the same time. So as you can see here, there is a small difference in rendering time, but it's not going to be that dramatic. But like I said, the normal map is always going to work the fastest, right? So I'm going to plug the normal map into the bump map, and I'm going to use this into the bump slot. And you can obviously increase the bump map from here. And obviously you can increase that from here as well. So either you can control there or there, right? And just like obviously I did this newbie mistake. Obviously recording and showing and explaining is not that easy as I thought it's gonna be. So all right, 90, just to double check everything. 90, yeah, that's fine. All right, cool. So obviously to avoid this, what I usually do when I import one texture, obviously you can run through some different nodes just to rotate everything in one go, but usually when I import a texture at zero orientation, I usually change the orientation of the unwrap mapping. So for example, I'm going to change this to 90 degrees or whatever, so I'm not going to have to go and change the orientation there, right? But usually if I'm not recording and I'm doing a real project, obviously I get that it's obviously an easy thing to do, but just you have to think of that in the beginning, right? When you import a texture, changes. When you import a texture, changing, because I was importing a texture and trying to explain and think what I need to explain, right? So okay, so I think we are happy with our bump map. So this is not really drastic, but it works really well. And that's about it in regards of the texture, right? So reflection, we have the reflection, we have the normal map, we have the height, and we have the glossiness, we have the diffuse, right? So like I said, if you want to play around with the IOR or the reflection, you can literally go here and increase the reflection even more. So for example, 150. Take a look at this now. There you go. All right, so on this highlight, we can definitely see that the bump map is, to my eyes, it's a bit too strong. So I'm gonna go here and decrease the bump map to 10. I'm just double checking if the mapping is correct again, because I don't want to make this newbie mistake, and I know where I made the newbie mistake again, right? So another thing is always try to, use the same mapping size, because if you're gonna put this into 1-on-1, that's gonna be wrong, right? So 2 and 2, just copy and paste the number really easy. So everything is fine here. Don't worry about the filtering, it can be different, but in regards of tiling, it has to be the same. All right, there we go. So now we should get more correct results. There we go. So I'm kind of happy with this wood, how it looks already. Is just, I think that the bump map is a bit too strong for my eyes. So I'm gonna keep this at 6. And I'm gonna keep this at 2.2. And that's our wood. There you go. So obviously don't forget to make the same orientation. Okay, so this is a bit too reflective, and I want to make this a bit more contrasty. 8.5. There you go. Let's just try to render this guy. There you go. So this is what I wanted to see, and I want a bit more reflection, so I'm gonna keep this to 250. There we go. So as you know, like I said, always try to get what you want to get. Don't just, oh, this texture is gray, I'm gonna use that texture. Always try to play around what you want to get from it, right? There you go. So I think I'm happy with the texture now. And what I want to do next is increase this number by a bit. Whoops, that's a bit too big. Maybe 165, something in the between. There you go. All right, so I'm happy with this wood texture. Obviously, you see that, these kind of textures take a bit longer to play around with than with these. You just copy paste, adjust it a bit, and you're good to go. With these ones, you have to go and rotate. You have to, play around with the tiling, obviously, and, normal maps, check out how the normal map is reacting with the material, etc., etc., and stuff like that, basically. So I showed you obviously a simple way how to create a wood material, and I showed you a bit more complicated way how to create a wood material. And I think that's gonna be enough for these more simpler wood materials. And now I just want to show you I think a couple more things in regards of creating more of a weird off material. So I'm gonna stop rendering this material here. And what I'm gonna do now is just gonna, obviously that's gonna be version 5, and I'm gonna shift and drag it here, and we're gonna create a blend material, right? So the blend material is this one, and I'm gonna plug this into the base 1, into the base, sorry. And what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna drag this guy here down with shift. So I'm making a copy. And I'm gonna put this into coat 1. And I'm gonna make this color at 1.3, the gamma, right? So maybe more than that, maybe 1.5. There you go. And I'm gonna make this less glossy and more matte looking, right? So there you go, something like that. Maybe less reflective, 140. There you go, so less reflective. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is obviously, sorry, I forgot to rename the material. So that's gonna be, I think that's gonna be our last wood material. So I think it's gonna give you a better understanding, right? So that's wood 6. Okay, I will create more wood materials for you guys just to, you know, get them, but for this video I'm just, obviously I'm trying to keep this as short as possible, but I'm trying to explain as much things as possible as well. So all right, so this is going to be our main material, the base, and that's going to be our scratch material, which is obviously going to be underneath this material, right? So basically you would, you know, scratch it off or whatever. You will get the idea soon. So if I'm gonna apply this material on my dummy, right? So what's gonna happen now, Vray blend material is gonna blend 50% of that and 50% of that. Okay, so if I'm gonna render that out, obviously this is what is happening. It's blending 50 of that and 50 of that. So I'm gonna stop that here. Obviously I wanna save my scene just in case Max is gonna crash. So there you go. So I'm gonna be rendering this region here. And now what we're gonna do is basically apply a dirt map, Vray dirt, there you go, as a blend. Okay. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna apply a radius of, let's just say 3.5 centimeters, right? So our object is 1 meters size, right? So how this works, I want to show you a really quick preview. So that's gonna be our black color, maybe that one, and that's gonna be our red color. Okay, I'm gonna plug this as a base and I'm gonna plug this as a coat. Okay, so this is what we're getting now here, right? So a radius of 3.5, but what we need to change here now is the invert normals, right? We're gonna invert the normals. We wanna get the red color only on the edges. Okay, so do I need to recalculate this? All right, so that's the black, the red, and what we need to do now is basically just switch these, or swap these together, right? So basically the unoccluded color, which is not visible, is going to be the red one, right? So what we need to do here now is basically create this kind of effect. So basically we're creating a mask, right? So the white color is occluding, well, that's a weird word, sorry. Basically the white color is making your second effect, second material visible, right? So it is making it visible. Okay, so the black color is basically going to be your other material, which is obviously invisible to this effect. It's really hard to explain, but you'll get it in the moment. So this is going to be your main material, this is going to be your second material. That's basically, this is going to be this is going to be your scratchy material, right? And you're going to apply a mask. This is the mask, and that's the mask over there. Okay, and you have a full control in between of the mask, in between of the effect, and etc, etc. And obviously you're increasing and decreasing the effect with this white color. My voice is going away. Okay, so I'm gonna try to keep this as fast as possible. So now I can increase the I can increase this radius to 3, for example, right? And if you want to increase this effect here, so sorry, I'm just gonna put this to 8 subdivs because it's gonna give us a bit of a better effect. Sorry, quality. I wouldn't go more than 8, honestly. So obviously you have a lot more options here, but I'm not gonna go into them because it's gonna take ages to explain them. But I just want to show you a quick approach how to create, you know, like for example, you would have scratches on the only on the edges of your material, right? So for example, so the black one is gonna be our main material there. All right. And as you can see here, it's rendering that one here. But I just want to show you one quick more thing how to increase the contrast. So either you can shift this guy, plug it into unoccluded, and plug it into the blend. So you can see now that you're getting a much more stronger effect. And you can do that, you know, a couple of times. I wouldn't over exaggerate this, but you know, you can do that. So basically you would increase that like that, or you can just type here output, plug it there, open this guy, output, enable color map, and just increase, put 2 points there, put one somewhere there, and put one there somewhere, and plug it there. So you are already seeing that the effect is quite strong, right? So you're increasing the contrast basically of the effect. See how sharp it gets. If you're moving it closer, it gets even sharper. And you can control the fall off if you want to, obviously, right? You will increase that a bit more. There you go. So so look, I'm gonna switch from output to 3 dirt maps. Bam. So almost the effect is stronger with this one node than with this one. Obviously, you're getting a bigger fall off with this one because obviously we're controlling a fall off a bit differently, and we're controlling a fall off here. Obviously you can right click, make it Bezier smooth. You can smooth it out, right? There you go. And if you're happy with this result, obviously, you know, you can even increase make this Bezier smooth as well if you want. So if this is giving you the result that you want, please use that. You know, you have the full control. You can even, you know, control this with one node if you want to. So for example, I'm kind of happy with that. I can control this at 4, for example. Fall off, I can make it more fall off. I can increase the fall off here if I want to, right? Distribution, so 0. It's gonna be really distributed, but at the same time you're not getting as much contrast, right? So 5, less distribution, 1. It's kind of in the middle. If I'm gonna apply this there, this is what you're gonna get, right? If I'm gonna do that, more fall off, less contrast, and etc, etc. So for example, for this purpose, I'm gonna use 2 blend materials, right? I'm gonna get this, I don't know, the effect that I kind of happy with it. So you can use different approaches. Obviously you can play around with the dirt or whatever, but just not to confuse you too much, I'm going to use just one blend material, right? And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my scratchy dirt materials, textures, where is it? Dirt maps. Where was it? There we go. So I will apply this here into radius. And this is what you're getting now, which is wrong. So what you need to do next is basically really easy, invert. There you go. So you're getting your scratches over there. So the next thing you want to try to do is obviously put this to 5, maybe more than that, double than that. There you go. So you're having some scratches which are working quite nicely. So now you're already tested out your material and you see that your and by the way, keep in mind that you can create, you know, a blend material into a blend material. You can use different 9 different materials if you want to blend with 9 different V-Ray dirts or whatever. You can create a really complicated material if you want to, but that's gonna take time and rendering time, keep in mind. So So now that I'm happy with my masking, for example, I can plug this guy here. Okay. And I can plug this guy here. There you go. Now, when I'm gonna start rendering it, you will start seeing some scratches there, but at the moment it's not that intense, right? So let me just recalculate this if Vray didn't make it. Okay, that's fine. So now I can try to plug this into the unoccluded and unoccluded. Put it into blend. All right, that's not showing off. Really weird. Just stop it. Let's try the production rendering. Okay, let me just try one more thing. So that's fine. I want to see some kind of blend one. There we go. So I'm gonna try to use that output here. Maybe it's gonna make it a bit stronger. So output, sorry, Vray dirt. Use this at 5, and output. I'm gonna use this at somewhere there and somewhere there, right? So it should be quite strong. I'm gonna use that. All right, so we start seeing those scratches there. Let us create a bigger. There we go. We're starting to see some scratches there, 10 maybe. Okay, and I think I'm happy with that one. Maybe we can increase this like that. Okay, so we're getting less of that effect. We want to make this maybe smooth. Less of that effect. All right, and now we can try to plug this guy here. And there we go. We're starting to see some scratches, which are, you know, barely visible, but it kind of looks quite realistic. And I can increase if I want to. And keep in mind, we can decrease this either by that curve, or either we can go here and decrease this effect by just basically pulling the blackish color, and you're gonna see literally none of that. So I'm gonna use the white full color because I want to give that effect. There you go. Right, so you do get that effect over there and over here, all on the edges, right? And you can control this material in whatever way, right? You can make it white or whatever. You can even put this material over into this a second slot, and you can move this into where is it? Sorry. So for example, color correction here, and you can put this into the blend, and literally your whole material is gonna start being, you know, scratchy, but we can start removing that by just simply making it black. You're gonna see less of that effect basically. But you will see a bit of it, right? Maybe 35. There you go. So something like that, right? And by the way, these numbers here, this is controlling, as I remember, this is controlling the intensity of the bitmap, and this is controlling the blendness in between of this map and this map, right? So play around with these numbers if you want to, but it's not like it's gonna make the effects smaller. So for example, so let me try to put this to red and red. So this is what's happening, right? So for example, I will remove that here. So you're getting only the first effect, right? And you're not using any the second effect. So this is literally it's not gonna react anything like that. So if I'm gonna plug this here, okay. So look what's gonna happen when I'm gonna make this 50, 20. So as you can see, I'm removing that detail there. Sorry, that mask, right? So 5, barely gonna see it. And 0, you're not gonna see it at all, right? So I'm reducing the effect, right? So look what's gonna happen now if I'm gonna play around with these settings here. So 0. So basically, I'm not using any mask anymore. 100%, I'm using full potential of this mask, right? So 0, I'm not using any mask. Basically, he's using just the color. Basically, this color as your mask is becoming, well, it's becoming your mask basically. So you know, the weaker effect or the stronger effect of the mask, it's basically the same, right? But if you're gonna use 100 here, if you're gonna change your color here, it's not gonna take a effect, right? So as you can see, you cannot reduce the effect, right? Because this number is using a full potential of this texture, right? Nothing, right? So if I'm gonna use this, 0, it's gonna use a full potential of this texture. So white is gonna be a full potential, right? 0 is gonna be nothing there. If I'm gonna use a slide color there, it's gonna use basically just you know, it's not gonna use a texture anymore. So but I can blend it, right? So let's just say I'm gonna be blending in between this color and I'm gonna be blending in between that bitmap. Okay, you can see that I'm getting a bit of that color, which is like a solid color, and I'm getting a bit of that bitmap there, right? So I can blend it. You mean you have you have control with the color correction, you have control with this color here, and you know, using a full potential of this bitmap if you want to, etc, etc. Or you can, like I said, really easy way, just controlling this with this number, right? Stronger, so 0, none, 100, full potential of the, right, of the dirt map, of the mask map. So I'm gonna plug this again here, plug this. Literally, the cool things about nodes in this material editor, that with all material editor you have to go and plug it in and reconnect and blah blah. With this one, basically, if I want to plug both into both slots, I could just have to replug it. So just point it there, bam, I plugged it in both slots. All right. So I will remove this a bit to the 20, 25 maybe. There we go. So this is what we're getting now with this material. It looks kind of weird off and looks kind of cool. There you go. So you have a bit of these things, and obviously you can add scratches if you want to, right? I mean, this thing is limitless. Honestly, you can add so much detail. So for example, I will add this into code 3. I will find another bitmap which is going to be a really strong effect. So I'm going to apply this into the third one. Whoops, sorry, and I need to invert it. Really easy. Invert. So just for your preview, I'm just gonna show this in the preview. So there you go. So these are the scratches which are really big. I'm gonna make them a bit smaller, and you see where we're getting the scratches, right? So now if I'm gonna render it, it should look quite cool. So basically we have a smaller scratches, we have bigger scratches. There we go. That's the big scratch. We have the edgy scratches. We have a bit of the scratches on the surface as well. And obviously this wood material looks quite cool if you ask me. All right, so I'm gonna cancel this render. So I'm gonna finish at this point here just because obviously it took too long already. I was trying to show you guys as much examples as possible. So basically I did show you guys how to create, just to summarize this, I did show you guys how to create a wood material, a nice looking wood. You can create really nice wood materials with just only one texture. The texture can be from 2K to 4 or more. You don't need to use a higher resolution texture, rather than just, you don't need to use 8K or 7K. 4K is gonna work all the time. You can even use 2K or 3K. It should be fine. 1K in some situations can look a bit dodgy and low quality texture. So, but obviously, if you cannot get a bigger texture, try to maybe recreate it in Photoshop from different textures or something like that. And yeah, so we created really simple two textures from one texture, right? Which are quite matte looking. Another texture we created was sorry, this one was like a lacquer with a bit of a bump map. Another texture was a bit of the bump map, a bit of the scratchiness on the texture, and this was a bit more complex texture, which is basically a more expensive way of creating textures. And but it is what it is. It will take a bit more time to create it. Obviously nowadays people are creating scripts and plugins that you basically like, for example, Polygon website, as I remember, they have a plugin or something like that, that you basically, if you download their textures, and they're obviously named their textures, so basically the plugin will recognize their textures and they will add in V-Ray instantly, which is a kind of cool thing. I don't know if it supports Corona or not, but honestly I don't care. To me, recreate this is like, a couple of seconds and I'm good to go. But obviously if you want to use those kind of plugins, you can, but obviously I would recommend first learning how to create these things and how they act in your scene, just for the future proof. If someone is gonna come to you or whatever and gonna say, can you please recreate this texture in 2 minutes, or can you please recreate this custom texture, you need to know how things work, sorry. And because it's not just gonna be plug and play, you will have to develop a skill or a basic understanding how the textures should work, or how they should work in that scene, or for whatever reason. So it's not like you're gonna always use your library. The library that you're gonna create or you're gonna buy, it's only gonna be for convenience. But if you're gonna be working in a company, most of the times you're gonna have to create a couple of custom textures, and they're gonna look how they will have to look, how the client will request how they have to look, etc, etc. So you will have to know how to recreate good looking textures in a fast way, right? So yeah, that's about it, guys. So we created a couple of wood textures, and I hope a lot of things made sense. Maybe some things will not make sense now, but obviously try to experiment with it. Like I said, the base thing is everything that I showed you, and from all of this you can create really nice looking wood textures. The most important thing is to get a nice looking wood texture, and from then on you can create whatever you want. If you have a really bad looking texture, like for example wood materials, never use a texture like that. There you go, perfect. never use a wood texture like that. Never use a wood texture. Well, this could work in some situations, but it's gonna look quite weird. Actually, this is not that bad. Um, but I've seen people using these kind of textures, and yeah, they kind of look weird and not realistic. And when you create reflection glossiness map or reflection maps or bump maps from these kind of textures, yeah, in reality they're gonna look really, really bad. If you would want to create this kind of texture, a wood texture, it definitely would have to be a lacquer texture, right? So no bump maps, nothing. But other than that, like I said, the main thing is to get a nice looking wood texture. The other thing is to obviously recreate the physical values like reflection glossiness, reflections, bump maps, normal maps, and all of that stuff. But honestly, nowadays you have, like I said, software plugins that you can one click it and it will recreate all the maps for you. But the basic understanding about wood materials, how to create them, it's really easy. You just saw them, you know, new ones from one, a bit more complex, a new one, and obviously you can play around with dirt maps and obviously other masks and create scratches, fingerprints, and all whatever you want to create, right? So yeah, guys. So thank you for watching this video, guys. Obviously it is too long, but sorry about that. I was trying to explain as much things as possible, and like I said, you don't need to watch the whole thing. You just need to watch maybe 20 or 40 minutes just to get the basic understanding for you to get going. So like I said before, also I just gonna give you the keys. You're gonna have to unlock the door yourself, which means experiment with your materials in a dummy scene, because it's just gonna be faster to learn. Okay, so thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you in my next video. And please guys, if you can, like and subscribe, and please share my videos to others, because I want to reach as much people as possible, just to make their lives easier in CGI. So thank you very much, and yeah, see you in my next video. Take care.